After 3 years of absolute no contact. I thought they finally missed me. But when I arrived at the high-end restaurant, my entire extended family was already there, 16 people in total. The table was covered in empty lobster shells, premium Wagyu steaks, and multiple $400 bottles of wine. Before I could even sit down, my dad smiled coldly, tapped the massive bill, and said, "You're a big shot executive now, so you're paying for everyone, right?" The entire table laughed, watching to see me break. They thought they had trapped me. Instead of screaming, I calmly called the waiter over, leaned in, and whispered exactly 2 sentences into his ear. The waiter's eyes went wide, he nodded, and he walked away. 15 minutes later, my family's smug smiles turned to pure horror. Follow my story until the end to see exactly how I turned their $4,000 trap into their worst nightmare, and how far my story has reached. My name is Elena. I am 26 years old, and for the last 3 years of my life, I've been completely dead to my family. No text messages on my birthday, no invitations to Christmas dinner, and absolutely zero communication. I was completely cut off because I refused to let my father control my career and give my hard-earned savings to my golden child older brother, Julian. I had to build my life entirely from scratch, working 80-hour weeks until I finally secured a high-paying position as a corporate logistics manager. I bought my own apartment, managed my own finances, and finally found peace. Then, out of nowhere on a rainy Tuesday evening, my phone buzzed. It was a call from my mother. My heart stopped. When I answered, her voice wasn't cold or distant like it used to be. Instead, she sounded warm, almost maternal, dripping with a synthetic sweetness that immediately made my stomach churn. She told me that life was too short for grudges. She said she and my father had been doing a lot of thinking, that they miss me terribly, and they wanted me to meet them for dinner at Le Petit Boulevard, the most expensive, exclusive high-end restaurant in the city. They said they wanted to officially make amends and welcome me back into the family fold. Part of me, the lonely 23-year-old girl who had been abandoned 3 years ago, desperately wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that my parents had finally grown a conscience and realized they loved me more than they loved control. But as I pulled up to the restaurant's valet parking in my brand new car, a heavy, cold feeling settled deep in my chest. Something felt completely off. When I stepped into the dining room of Le Petit Boulevard, the heavy scent of truffles and expensive garlic butter hit me instantly. I looked around, expecting to see a quiet, intimate table for 3. Instead, my eyes landed on a massive banquet table in the center of the VIP section. My jaw dropped. My entire extended family was sitting there. Uncles, aunts, cousins I hadn't seen in half a decade, and right at the head of the table, looking like a smug mafia don, was my father. There were 16 people in total, and the atmosphere was wildly loud and celebratory. As I walked closer, the sheer scale of the ambush became clear. The table was absolute chaos. It looked like a horde of locusts had just swept through a luxury buffet. Massive silver platters were piled high with empty lobster shells and lemon wedges. Half-eaten plates of premium Wagyu steak sat cooling in pooling juices. Empty, expensive bottles of wine, vintages I knew cost at least $400 a pop from my corporate networking dinners, were clustered around the centerpieces. They hadn't waited for me. In fact, they had clearly been eating and drinking heavily for at least 2 hours before I even arrived. The entire table went dead silent the moment they noticed me standing there. My mother gave a tight, theatrical little wave, but it was my father's reaction that made my blood run cold. He didn't stand up to hug me. He didn't offer a seat. Instead, he reached into his breast pocket, pulled out a gold pen, and aggressively tapped the thick leather folder containing the restaurant bill. He smiled, his eyes glinting with pure, malicious greed. "Ah, Elena," he announced loudly, ensuring the entire table heard. "Look who finally decided to show up. You're a big shot executive now, so you're paying for everyone, right?" To understand how my father could look his own daughter in the eye and trap her with a $4,000 bill, you have to understand the toxic history of the family dynamic I had escaped. 3 years ago, I wasn't a corporate logistics manager driving a brand new car. I was 23, working 2 dead-end jobs, and trying to save every single penny to pay off my college tuition. My older brother, Julian, was the golden child who could do no wrong. He had spent his entire 20s crashing luxury cars, failing out of multiple expensive business schools, and accumulating massive credit card debts that my father happily paid off. When Julian completely ruined his credit score, my father demanded that I co-sign a massive $50,000 business loan for him. I refused. I knew Julian would never pay it back, and it would completely ruin my financial future before I even had a chance to start. My father was absolutely furious. He screamed that I was an ungrateful, selfish snake who didn't care about bloodlines. He explicitly told me that if I didn't hand over my savings and my credit to my brother, I was no longer a part of the family. They completely blocked my number, changed the locks on the family home, and treated me like I was dead. They entirely ignored me when I was struggling to pay rent and skipping meals just to survive. But things changed 2 weeks ago. A cousin spotted my recent promotion on LinkedIn and saw a picture of my new car on social media. Suddenly, the worthless daughter was successful and making six figures. They didn't want to make amends. They just wanted a target for their greed. The entire table erupted into laughter, mocking my silence. My aunt smirked, and Julian raised his glass of expensive wine at me with an incredibly arrogant grin. They all thought they had trapped me, believing my shame and desire for family approval would force me to just hand over my credit card. I took a deep breath, forcing a small, submissive smile onto my face to play along with their little game. "Of course, Dad," I said softly, pretending to be intimidated. "Let me just look over the bill first to see what we're dealing with." I pulled up a chair at the very edge of the table, purposely refusing to order a single item of food or drink for myself. My father smugly pushed the heavy leather folder toward me. I opened it and looked at the grand total. It was exactly $4,120. While my family cheered my apparent surrender, immediately waving down the staff to order another round of premium desserts and expensive cognacs on my dime, I quietly flagged down our head waiter, a professional-looking man named Marcus. I gestured for him to lean down so I could speak to him privately. I looked him dead in the eye and whispered exactly 2 sentences. First, I said, "I have just arrived. I have consumed absolutely nothing, and I am not legally associated with this party's reservation." Then, I followed it up with a real hammer. "The man at the head of the table who made the reservation under his own name is attempting to commit corporate billing fraud using my identity, so please bring out the restaurant manager and your security team immediately." Marcus's eyes went completely wide. He looked at the rowdy table, then back at me, nodded firmly, and walked away. I calmly stood up from my chair, smoothing down my jacket while my family remained completely oblivious, laughing and deeply engrossed in their stolen luxury. I looked at my mother and said pleasantly, "I'm just going to step into the restroom to freshen up before I process the payment." My father waved his hand dismissively, entirely satisfied that his malicious trap had worked perfectly. I walked casually past the bustling kitchen doors, grabbed my winter coat from the coat check attendant, and slipped completely out into the cool, dark night air. I got into my car, locked the doors, and drove away. Exactly 15 minutes went by as I cruised down the quiet highway, listening to the gentle hum of the engine. Back at Le Petit Boulevard, the atmosphere of celebration was about to face absolute ruin. Because I wasn't there, the head waiter, Marcus, returned to the table accompanied by the stern-looking restaurant manager and 2 imposing security guards. Instead of bringing out the premium desserts my cousins had greedily ordered, the manager slapped the original $4,000 bill directly in front of my father. He coldly informed the entire party that the young woman had left, and the bill needed to be settled immediately. The sudden shift from smug arrogance to pure, unadulterated panic was absolute. My father frantically looked around the crowded dining room, his face turning an angry shade of crimson as he realized I was completely gone. Julian stopped laughing mid-sip, his eyes widening in horror. My aunts and uncles began arguing loudly, realizing that the free ride was over. They were trapped inside the very nightmare they had carefully designed for me, facing a premium restaurant staff that had absolutely zero patience for their cheap, dramatic games. My phone absolutely exploded the second I reached the highway. The quiet cabin of my car was filled with a relentless barrage of angry, vibrating sounds as a steady stream of frantic text messages and furious voicemails flooded my screen. My father called me 7 times in a row, his voicemail messages escalating from demanding screams about respect to desperate, high-pitched pleas. My mother texted me that I was a heartless monster who was destroying the family, while Julian left a frantic text accusing me of ruining his life. I just smiled, enjoying the beautiful, quiet peace of the drive. You see, the 2 sentences I whispered to Marcus had stripped away their protective camouflage completely. Because my father had made the official reservation under his own legal name and business phone number to impress everyone, the restaurant management held him entirely responsible for the entire $4,120 tab. They refused to let anyone leave the VIP section until a valid credit card cleared the balance. But there was a massive piece of hidden information my family didn't know I possessed. My father's logistics business was secretly facing total bankruptcy due to years of funding Julian's failed investments. He didn't actually have $4,000 to spare. In fact, he had maxed out his final corporate credit cards just to pay for the first few bottles of wine, fully counting on forcing me to cover the rest to save him from public embarrassment. When his card inevitably declined in front of the entire extended family, the restaurant manager threatened to call the police right then and there. My arrogant, proud father was forced to beg his own brothers and sisters for loans on the spot, completely shattering his carefully constructed facade of wealthy success forever. 3 months have passed since that night, and I have never felt more at peace. I blocked every single one of their numbers, completely cutting the toxic ties that bound me to their greed. I am finally living my life for myself, surrounded only by people who value me for who I am, not what is in my bank account. My father was forced to liquidate his remaining business assets to settle his mounting debts, and Julian finally had to get a real job to support himself. They wanted to destroy my future, but they only ended up destroying their own false kingdom. Now, I am incredibly curious about all of you who have listened to my story today. If your own family threw a malicious $4,000 trap at you under the guise of making amends, would you have walked out the way I did, or would you have handled the situation section below? Meanwhile, I am leaving right here on the final screen 2 other incredible stories that will definitely surprise you. Thank you so much for watching.